One of the most innovative industries in the world is quantum computing. And you see data centers, the discussion, GPUs, the discussion. You see all the discussions of all of the infrastructures that go into powering this evolution, this AI boom that we're in right now. And one of the companies that is part of that quantum computing side of things that may be set to power a large portion of the AI in the future, we'll see, is IonQ. IonQ has had some tremendous moves recently. IonQ has made it up to almost previous highs that it saw back in January of 2025. We started covering it back here in early November, and when we started covering it, it was just around 10 or 11 bucks a share. We saw it surge to as high as $54 a share before selling off when the NVIDIA CEO announced that quantum computing was 15 or 30 years away. We went to the conference, we spoke with the executives at IonQ and saw the technology they were developing, and we thought, this seems closer than 15 years away. This seems like it's happening now. And then very shortly after that, what we saw happen was the company go ahead and change their wording on their sites to quantum is now. But if you look at their partnerships, they got Air Force Research Laboratory, they're working with Microsoft, Amazon, they even are backed by NVIDIA as a partner there. You see Lockheed Martin, even Accenture, which is a very interesting defense company that's looking good on the valuation side. And what happened recently, 3 stages to a reversal can be seen here. If we look at the closer knit time frame, you can see it was selling down here from $45 a share in February until basically March, and it was holding below this EMA. It's getting rejected, selling down from that $45 range. When it found a bottom at $17, pushed above the EMA and found this support resistance when it consolidated from left to right all the way until April. After April, we saw it start to continue up, hold above this EMA, and have a bullish momentum, which oftentimes in a bullish environment, the EMA acts that way. And then we see it get up into these levels. It started to push up a little bit more today after some serious volatility. And we're looking at a potential margin for profit of 26% if it makes it up to previous highs in this overall uptrend. But we saw it recently get rejected at that $48 price point up here, sell back down, and now we're seeing this move. So it just broke above the EMA on the near term. And if we go down to, like, let's say today, just alone, the volatility was quite insane. You saw it sell as low as 37, push up to 40, down to 37, and now it's at $40.80. So that was a swing of about 9%. As we start to look at why they're a company to watch, the reality is this company has 3 things to watch, which are the markets, the analysis, and the profit potential. The market of quantum computing is just around 100 to 200 million or $200 billion, and it's expected to grow to 3 trillion according to IBM and Microsoft, which are both up today by about 1% and 3%. And we see that IonQ has had some momentum recently. If we take a look at some of their financials, they did just come in with a better net income than what they've seen, up 18% year over year. And their net profit margin surged about 18% year over year as well. One thing to note in quantum computing, when you look at these experimental stages that they go through, they're still at a moment where I believe they will be one of the more relied upon technologies for computing. They're using it for drug discovery, so coming up with millions and millions of data points. So let's say you have 20 years worth of research, and a human can't go through it. AI can kind of go through it, but you take all that research, you put it through a quantum computer, you get it down to, let's say, 8 options, and then from there you can come up with, in this case, what was a way to improve the lithium-ion battery by about 70%. So QPUs, or quantum computers, are used in tandem with the AI and with the classical computers. Now, their quantum computing is trapped ion, which is, if you look at their technology, there's a lot of different types of quantum computing. But one thing to note, while they have their trapped ion technology, they have the atom, nature's qubit. It's the most important part of any quantum computer. According to IonQ, it says it's the quantum bits or the qubits, and IonQ's qubits are ionized iridium. That's the worst pronunciation I've heard in a while, but a silvery rare earth metal. Each iridium, I need to know how to say that, atom is perfectly identical to every other iridium atom in the universe. Moreover, once prepared in a particular stable quantum state, they can remain in that state for very long periods of time. They're so consistent, they're used in one of the most accurate atomic clocks ever built. And when we look at a company like QBTS, for example, they use quantum annealing, and they say quantum annealing is better, it's more proved, for example, or it's like has real world use cases than, for example, the trapped ion. But the thing about QBTS is they're still not proven to have solid benchmarks that show that they outperform GPUs. I think they've been overbought personally. I think they're a little overextended and have been since they reached that $19.70 range. And I'll tell you why. When we went to the event, I was able to talk with a lot of the executives, including the CEO, and see how they run their technology. And one of the, I don't want to say red flags, but things that got me thinking, QBTS was saying that they are simulating 2 qubit gates. They're simulating it. They're trying to simulate what IonQ is doing for real, for example, or Rigetti is doing for real. They're trying to simulate it with a computer. That was something they were planning on doing and they were working towards and developing, simulating 2 qubit gates, while Rigetti and QBTS, or not QBTS, Rigetti and IonQ are already working towards that. And so I thought, so they're trying to simulate that which IonQ is doing 100% for real with the trapped ion technology. And that got me thinking. I thought, if they continue to come out with their contracts, they continue to develop more, that IonQ might be the most obvious leader in what will be the quantum computing space. They also just announced today that they're participating in a Quantum Korea 2025 Support Quantum Hackathon. One of the big hurdles that they're struggling with in the market is between the quantum computer and actually storing the information and the data that goes through and comes out of the quantum computer. Data storage with quantum computers is difficult. It's difficult because it has so much data that you run through. And so the frequency at which ions move is so high, and there's so much that runs through that quantum computer, that to be able to store it on a solid state drive as of now doesn't seem to be optimized. And it's actually a software problem more than it is hardware problem. So they have a lot of hackathons. You can see this hackathon here. You can also see that once they solve that, they're able to clearly demonstrate and measure and use the ions as the trapped ion capability for calculating things, that they could be an extremely powerful, low cost of energy quantum computing company. And that's why I think they have the backing that they have, working with Dell, NVIDIA, Air Force Research Laboratory, and the list goes on. And you can also find them over on Amazon Bracket. If you go through and you look at where they are in their journey, they're beginning to establish these partnerships. So that's the market stage. They're starting to really break through. Then we get into the analysis. Now, the financials on IonQ haven't been perfect. Definitely seen net incomes being negative, with an all-time net income negative in 2024. However, their revenues have been growing very fast, up 95% year over year in 2024. And their balance sheet, nothing too special. Quarterly, they're growing with their total assets, while their liabilities have come down. But annually, at least in 2024, they weren't looking as hot, but you do see some improvements here in 2025. So year over year, total assets is up more than that of their liabilities, which indicates more runway, more growth, and potentially some good cash flows in the future for them to continue to grow. One of the things that is a result of why their financials have that cash balance sheet is this $2.7 billion Quantum Initiative Reauthorization Act that was recently passed. And this went towards R&D. And one of the main companies standing to benefit when the U.S. senators introduced this bill for a 5-year, $2.7 billion bill for advancing practical applications in quantum technology and making the U.S. as a leader in quantum. Are they investing enough? That's the question. But I think what we're seeing here is that IonQ was one of the main companies standing to benefit from the pass of this bill. You can see IonQ being mentioned here by at the time CEO Peter Chapman. So it was really good. So that could be why they're seeing some influx of capital and they're starting to see some more expansion there. Now, when it comes to the news that they've had, they got the hackathons, they do have some partnerships with NASA, and there's contracts that have research-based fundamentals that are still cash flows. Maybe they're not commercial as much as we'd like to see, but still cash flows. So the financials, they look okay. And the news looks fairly good. But what we're looking at with the chart, they're at a critical stage here. We've seen some recent volatility. We're really looking at whether or not they're going to hold this overall uptrend. They did just validate it this morning. We saw them sell down, kind of double bottom at this rising support at $37 a share. And we're looking for this continuation up into these levels. There would be about a $50 price point, a 20% increase on IonQ. I'd like to see if we can trade it later this week. And if we do, on the nearer term, short term, outside of our longer term positions, we like to trade the short term. And if we do, that 20% swing would be a 40% swing over here on IonX. So IonX, we got into a position. It started to push up. We actually managed risk here before it sold off big. And then it actually recovered all the way up. Isn't that funny? Sometimes that happens. But that's okay. Our portfolio's up despite managing risk there today. We had a trade with Tesla this morning. And they had the robotaxi news that's doing quite well, so we were able to make a trade there. But again, that 20% swing on IonX will be a 40% swing over here on IonX, which is the 2x, which we'll be watching for that margin of profit. It's a beautiful thing. I think quantum computing is growing fast. There's going to be some rocky volatility in the near term potentially, but if we see them break above this level, this $65 range on IonX, that would be a previous resistance that they've struggled to break above. If we see them kind of push above there, we'd have some more confirmation for the next trade, potentially riding that 30 to 40% swing up into that $85 or $90 price point. Otherwise, we got to watch this level. If they sell below that $56, $57 range, or I guess over on IonQ, the true price would be below about $37 a share, then that would be a potential break in pattern. We got to reassess the overall trend. But we'll see if they continue up, and we'll be watching live tomorrow at Market Open. If you guys would like to see our daily live trading, it's in StockMate. It's the second link below. And hopefully you enjoyed it. If I earned your thumbs up, hit the like button. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.